Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us today. My name is Raquiiba Williams. I am a Black femme who lives in Durham, North Carolina, and I love doing work around people finding themselves and their authenticity. I believe that life is a journey and that we are all deserving of love, peace, grace, and abundance, no matter what stage of life that you're at. I am polyamorous, queer, and I'm growing. I use my voice to orate and to encourage and inspire others to find what truths resonate with them and so that they're able to find joy in every asset of their life or every facet of their life, excuse me. My hope in sharing my journey and any piece of my story that I share is to encourage other people to know that it is okay to take up space, to live fully and authentically, and to make choices that support your well being. And so today I'm here to share a little bit about my journey with polyamory, how it's helped me learn about myself and love. And here's my social media. You can find me at Debbie Estelle on Facebook and Instagram. All right, so today we're going to talk about polyamory specifically, but polyamory falls under the umbrella of ethical non-monogamy. So ethical non-monogamy is like an umbrella term that we use to describe many types of non-monogamous relationships that are done with the consent of other people. And so examples of ethical non-monogamy could be polyamory, polygamy, swinging, open relationships. But today, I'm going to talk about my own personal journey with polyamory. Ethical non-monogamy is the practice of taking part in relationships that are not completely exclusive between two people with the consent and knowledge of all parties. And polyamory is defined as practicing or being open to relationships with more than one person. The thing I love about polyamory is inclusive. So a lot of people are familiar with polygamy, which is often used in religious settings. Sometimes people are polygamous to procreate. Often that dynamic, though, is like a man that has multiple wives. Polyamory is inclusive of people of all races, ethnicities, genders, gender expressions, and sexual orientations. Polyamory is practiced by folks that fall in various places on the romantic, sexual, and gender spectrum. And within polyamory, there are many different relationship dynamics. And I'm going to keep it, I know we don't have much time today, so like I won't go into all of these things unless people have questions. I did provide links, and if anybody wants to replay, that'll be available to a few sites that I think are really excellent that give a lot of detail about polyamory. So blackandpoly.org is a really good one, and I know that everybody is not Black. The reason why I chose that particular site is because on the internet, a lot of what we learn about polyamory comes from like the white perspective, right? So like there's not a lot of Black people or Black or brown people who talk openly about polyamory. And so there's not always a lot of resources that talk about the different nuances and how we have to navigate within our own communities as Black and brown people, like how that affects our lives. And blackandpoly.org has a lot of articles about just polyamory as a whole and how people navigate that as Black and brown people. More Than Two is a really good site as well. It has a lot of information about what polyamory is, different dynamics, just different book recommendations and the like. So I put those links down there so people can do more exploring on their own if they're curious. And back to dynamics, there are different relationship dynamics practiced within polyamory. Examples of that would be KTP, which is kitchen table polyamory, DADT, which is do not, don't ask, don't tell. Relationship anarchy is kind of when people don't put any particular weight on like specific relationships, like all relationships are equal. And parallel poly is kind of like if I'm dating someone and I have a partner, but they have a partner, we don't share a partner, but basically we all know, but we do it separately. And here's some other helpful links in the Black and Brown community talking about not only polyamory, but any sort of relationship dynamics, or when we talk about sex and sexual pleasure outside of like cis hetero relationship norms is sometimes taboo. And so a lot of times people don't know where to find information about like the gender spectrum, the sexuality spectrum. That could be very new for people. And so I wanted to provide some links so that people, again, if they're curious, can do some research on their own. And then there is that first link up there is talking about something called being queer platonic, which we're going to actually talk about that a little bit later because it has a lot to do with my journey. So for me, my journey in polyamory has been pretty awesome. Anyone who knows me in real life, like I kind of get teased sometimes, like knows that I talk about this stuff all the time. That's why I'm really excited to be here with you all today. It's been a journey, like a really beautiful one. I believe that I realized I was polyamorous about 2015. About 2011. I was actually still married. And I fell in love with one of my, and I said childhood, it's not my childhood friend, it's my high school friend. And I think I was a little confused because I didn't understand much about polyamory at the time. And I was kind of like, hey, you're married, like you chose, like what's happening? And so because I was at that time still living a really conventional, heteronormative, like Christian life, I didn't pursue it, although I was very honest with my husband about the fact that I did, fall in love with this person. But because I wanted to do things in a way that I considered ethical, like I did not end up like pursuing that relationship. But he and I actually are still friends, both my ex-husband and actually this gentleman who I fell in love with. In 2014, I fell in love with a colleague at work. She was amazing. And I think it was like at that time that I was like, okay, something is going on. And so I started to do research and try to learn more about my feelings, even though it was like really scary at first. I wasn't able to really practice polyamory until 2016. In 2016, I had a lot of life changes. I got separated. I came out as queer pansexual. And so like I was able to explore my sexuality more. I was able to explore like various relationship types. And in 2016 was the first time that I had a polyamorous relationship. I actually dated a woman who was married. And I want to say something that I feel is really important, especially for people who are, in communities of color, because a lot of times there are a lot of socioeconomic reasons, there's a lot of religious reasons, and there's a lot of reasons like just based on how we're viewed in community that we're not able to talk about these things openly or be out. And so your relationship choices are valid, even if you are not out, right? And so while a big part of my own journey so that I can help inspire people is to tell my story and to tell, how I've navigated these things. It is perfectly valid if you're not out, if you can't come out, and if you choose not to be out or that you choose not to talk about these things publicly. And so a big part of my journey with polyamory, I've learned a lot about love, and it always excites me. I always say that love is big, love is massive. And I think that while I've known that in my heart, polyamory has helped me be able to explore that more and put it into terms. So there's different types of love. A lot of times the love that we know the most is romantic love, which is a feeling of love or strong attraction towards another person. And often that entails courtship behaviors undertaken by an individual to express those overall feelings and emotions. So when we think of romantic love, we think about people having, boyfriends or girlfriends or partners, marriage, spouse, long-term committed partners. Platonic love is another love that's really common, of course, because that's like our friendship love, even though we don't always talk about that a lot, right? And so before I realized I was polyamorous, like while I had friends, I don't think I thought a lot about the fact that like platonic relationships are actually relationships, right? They require communication and care and presence, and for you to be aware of your friends and to listen to them, to make them feel valued and important, right? And back to things that are common for the Black and Brown community, like a lot of us come from really religious backgrounds, particularly Abrahamic backgrounds, which are like Islam or Christianity, sometimes Judaism, right? And so a lot of times we come from backgrounds where a lot of emphasis is put on romantic love. But when we get a spouse, we're not always really taught how to, or really encouraged to really nurture and keep our platonic relationships going strong, right? So platonic love was first in the 1500s. It was a concept developed by a philosopher named Plato, which is the reason why we call it platonic love. And nowadays we use the term to refer to love that isn't romantic or sexual in nature. And similarly, a relationship that is platonic is a relationship that isn't romantic or sexual in nature. We don't often talk about sexual love, which is also valid. And I know sometimes in the queer community, like because we are taught to deconstruct a lot of things, we talk a lot about it, like how someone can have sexual attraction towards someone, but not be romantically inclined toward them, which is why sometimes we'll talk about people being bisexual versus biromantic, right? Because you could have sexual feelings for someone that you do not have romantic feelings for, nor do you want to pursue anything romantic with them, right? Which brings me to my favorite thing, which is queer platonic love. And this is a lot of where my journey has lied, because I realized that a lot of the relationships that I have are not easily defined or able to be put in like this neat little box. Everyone may not define these relationship types as queer platonic. I'm in the queer community, right? And so that is the reason I first heard it there, like in a course. And when I looked at it, I realized that, like I said, a lot of my relationships fit within this dynamic. And so I want to just kind of go through the picture because it describes a lot, right? And then I'll kind of talk about how this has really affected my life and what it's taught me about love and people. When we talk about, so what it says is, in order to understand queer platonic relationships, you first need to think about these social norms. So friendship myths. Friends do not feel as strongly about each other as they do their romantic partners. Friends do not get married. Friends do not move cities, states, or countries to be with each other. Friends do not celebrate anniversaries or markers of their friendship. Romance myths. Growing up means dating and getting married to a romantic partner. Romance requires showing physical affection. Romantic partners are more important than friends. Romantic partners might raise a child together, unlike friends who would not. And let me also say something while I'm doing this piece. There's nothing wrong with being in monogamous relationships. There is nothing wrong with being, straight, heterosexual. There's nothing wrong with monogamy. I think that a lot of us are either more inclined to monogamy. Some of us are more inclined to polyamory. Sometimes it's a combination of like just your life and who you become over time that you might revisit ideas and ideals about love. If you're a person who believes in like soulmates or soul connections, sometimes you'll kind of meet a person that you can't easily define. and realize that sometimes some of your closest people may not be like romantic partners, right? Or at least not romantic partners that fit in the traditional sense. So I like having these conversations because I like to leave room for different relationship styles, different relationship dynamics, different types of people to become visible. And also for those of us who are queer but have family members and friends who are not, I think having these conversations help them to understand us, more. And so in a heteronormative kind of world, these things would not be myths, right? Like, because you don't raise children with someone who's not a romantic partner, right? Or you wouldn't think it was wise to move cities or states to be close to a friend, right? In my life, my friends honestly have been like some of my closest loves, honestly, like my most stable, healthy, long-term loves. And they have been there for me through thick and thin, helped me navigate many changes, and have made me feel loved and valued beyond measure. Even my sisters that are on this call, my bio sister, my other sisters, but I love them with my full heart, right? And they've loved me deeply, if that makes sense, right? Like in ways that have made me feel cared for and safe outside of a romantic partner, right? And I feel like for myself, if I wasn't polyamorous and if I didn't have to think about what I thought about love or what I was taught about love and how I kind of put love in a box, I don't think I would have ever recognized how important and valuable they were to me, right? Which kind of goes to this point here in this picture where it talks about friends not being as important as romantic partners, because they very much are. So queer platonic, it says, is an umbrella term for relationships that queer, the platonic, bending the rules for telling apart the romantic from the non-romantic. So no two queer platonic relationships are exactly alike, but in one way or another, they all break the mold. So queer platonic partners may or may not be physically affectionate. And that's if you like to cuddle. I like to cuddle. So with my friends, I'm always cuddling with them. And it's not sexual, but it's very intimate. It makes me feel good and safe. And I like to do it. Not everybody's a cuddler, right? So hug or cuddle, be attracted to each other, have clear-cut feelings, live together, share a bed, get married, share finances, be polyamorous, go on dates. Back to the go on dates thing too. So some of my best dates actually have been with my platonic friends. Best date ever. I had a Valentine's date with a friend this year. My goodness, best date ever. You can make major life decisions together or not, make commitments, keep it non-physical, kiss on the lips or otherwise, have ambiguous feelings, live separately, sleep in separate beds, celebrate anniversaries, rear children, care for pets, partner exclusively, have sex, stay together long term, be in emergency contacts, or keep it casual.
So I have a question. So you basically would have to be queer to experience these things, or could you be heterosexual?
Yes, so I think the term queer platonic just has to do with the blurring of lines. So it's the queering of the lines. You do not have to be queer. And I wonder, I'll do some research. I try to do some research, but I'll try to see if there's another term for it, that people use outside of the queer community. But it does not mean you have to be queer. No, it just basically talks about that the lines don't have to be so defined. And yes, you can experience that as a hetero person. I think that a lot of, and I don't want to go into this too much because I know that that's not what this session is about, but I'm a person who believes in soul mates and soul connections, right? And we talk a lot about it for those people who believe in soulmates and soul connections, but every soulmate is not romantic, right? There's sometimes we can meet friends who we deeply love and deeply care for, right? And we realize they're our person. And they're a person, but they're not a romantic person, but they're still a person. You love them, you do a lot of things with them, you would make sacrifices and concessions for them, you know what I mean? but they're not a person who you're sexual with or romantic with. When I realized that there was a term queer platonic, like it put a lot of things in perspective for me in terms of the way that I've navigated like a lot of my friendships, and that, like I was saying, a lot of my friendships or relationships don't fit into like this neatly defined box, right? When I said that I wanted to talk about like how polyamory, well, like what it taught me about life and people, one of the main things that it's taught me about life is that when you don't center like romantic relationships as your end all be all, or I've learned that the relationship that I have with myself is actually the most important, right? And I do not think you have to be polyamorous to learn that. I do not believe that you have to be polyamorous to feel that. But it was a big part of my journey in self-discovery, right? Because for me, you know, especially in my younger years, I spent like a lot of time looking for like the one, right? Like this one special person who is going to complete me and like be my everything, right? And so kind of when that didn't happen, I felt really defeated initially. And then I realized I was polyamorous, and then I was like, oh, this is exciting. And then I was like, oh, this is also really, really scary, right? Because if there's not a one, is there like a two or a three, or what does that mean for me, right? And so like I spent a lot of time just developing the relationship that I have with myself, right? Making sure that I understood my own worth and value. And it's still something that I'm working on and through. I don't think it's like a journey that ends. I think I'm in a really good place with it in this moment, but I don't think it's something that is ever like over. And I've also just learned that if I'm at a really solid, healthy space with myself, the way that I can engage with other people, right, is going to be from a more healthy, less codependent space, right? For me, polyamory, and again, you don't have to be polyamory to learn this, but it's been a big part of my journey, has taught me a lot about codependency too, right? Because if we are taught that this one person is supposed to be your end all, be all, your everything, right? Sometimes we can learn to rely on people in unhealthy ways. Now, to be clear, it does not mean that you can't be codependent and polyamorous. Like, that's just not true. But it helped me to really see my own codependency, if you will, and like to check it, and like to realize that I have to like kind of fill my own cup and know what I need and know what I want, know what I'm able to give myself, and know what I'm able to ask for from other people. It's also taught me this lovely slide, that we are free. You know, we get to love who we love, we get to love how we love, and we get to do it freely. And, you know, some things are a matter of compatibility, of course, because we all have like different relationship needs, whether we are monogamous or polyamorous or, you know, anywhere in between, right? Some people require more communication. Some people require less. And those things are all valid too. But it's that people are free. Like, I don't own anybody.